been told your kindness is your greatest strength. But have you ever wondered, what if it's also your greatest weakness? What if your soft heart became the very thing that breaks you? Not because you loved wrongly, but because you kept giving in a world that only knows how to take? You think kindness makes you good, but sometimes kindness is how you disappear. You've been told your kindness is beautiful, that your softness is a virtue, that your ability to forgive, to understand, to nurture is what makes you rare. And maybe that's true. But there comes a quiet moment in life when you begin to realize that even light can blind you if it shines in the wrong direction. That even the heart that means well can exhaust itself by beating too loudly for those who were never listening. Kindness is sacred, yes, but when it is unguarded, it becomes a slow disappearance. You don't even notice it at first. You think you're helping. You think you're doing what's right. You tell yourself, this is love, this is patience, this is goodness. Yet deep inside, something begins to fade. The more you give, the more you're emptied. The more you try to be the peacekeeper, the more you lose your own peace. And one morning, you wake up realizing the person you once were is no longer here. You smiled too long through the ache. You've bent too far to keep everyone else standing. That's how the kind woman disappears. Not in one dramatic moment, but little by little, piece by piece, in every silence that swallowed her truth, in every apology that wasn't hers to make, in every time she put others before herself and called it compassion. What she thought was goodness was often just exhaustion dressed in grace. She doesn't mean to vanish. It happens quietly, like a candle slowly burning down in a room where no one's paying attention. And that's the tragedy, isn't it? That kindness, when misunderstood, becomes self-erasure, because when you are constantly adjusting your light to make others comfortable, you stop realizing that you are meant to shine, not to dim. There's a difference between giving love and giving yourself away. One nourishes both hearts, the other drains one dry. The kind woman often confuses the two, believing that her worth comes from how much she endures. She becomes the listener, the healer, the rescuer, but never the one rescued. She builds everyone else's world while her own begins to crumble, and the world praises her for it, calls her strong, selfless, admirable. But deep within her chest, a quiet whisper says, "But what about me?" And when she dares to ask that question, not out loud, but deep within the soul, something begins to shift. It's not rebellion, it's awakening. The realization that being endlessly kind isn't always love. Sometimes it's fear, fear of being disliked, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being needed. She realizes that her smile was sometimes a mask to hide her exhaustion, that her silence wasn't peace, it was survival. And that's when the story begins to change, because there is a moment in every woman's life when she grows tired of disappearing. She stops mistaking her softness for weakness. She begins to see that being kind doesn't mean being available to everyone, that love without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. She starts to notice how her yes has been used like currency, spent on people who never intended to give anything in return. She starts to see how being nice became a habit of self-abandonment, saying yes when her soul screamed no, laughing when she wanted to cry, pretending to be okay when she was quietly falling apart. There's something deceptive about being nice. It's not the same as being kind. Niceness is performance. Kindness is presence. Niceness is fear in disguise. The fear of rejection, of confrontation, of losing control. It's the art of smiling through discomfort. But kindness, true kindness, comes from strength. It's firm, clear and honest. It doesn't seek validation, it seeks truth. When you are too nice, you learn to silence your own needs so that others may speak freely. You agree to things that don't feel right. You tolerate what hurts just to avoid the label of difficult. You become the keeper of peace that doesn't really exist, a fragile illusion of harmony that costs you your authenticity. And that's the dangerous thing. The world loves a woman who is agreeable, but it rarely celebrates the woman who says, "This is not okay." The nice woman walks through life carrying invisible chains, the kind she forged herself through every moment of self-denial. She believes that keeping everyone happy is love, when in truth it's imprisonment, because peace built on pretending isn't peace at all. It's self-betrayal wearing the mask of virtue. And when she starts to see that, something inside her begins to tremble, not with fear, but with recognition. She begins to see how her voice, once silenced for safety, has been waiting to be heard. She realizes that saying no is not rejection, it's self-respect. That setting boundaries doesn't make her cold, it makes her whole. No, such a small word, such enormous freedom. No, to being drained by those who only take. No, to being guilted for needing space. No, to relationships that require your suffering to survive. Every no becomes a sacred act of self-remembrance. Every no echoes through her spirit like a song of liberation. It's not anger that drives her, it's clarity. The understanding that kindness without wisdom is chaos, that love without discernment is bondage. And when she learns to say no, something miraculous happens. Her yes becomes powerful again, because now it's chosen, not forced. It's real, it carries energy, intention, and authenticity. It's not a reflex born from fear, but a decision grounded in peace. People around her might not understand this new strength. They'll say she's changed. They'll call her distant, difficult, unkind. But she will smile, not the polite hiding smile she once wore, but a calm, knowing one. Because she has learned that not everyone will understand the version of her that no longer bends. She learns that being misunderstood is a small price to pay for inner freedom. She learns that true kindness begins within. That before she can pour into others, she must first fill herself. That her peace is not selfish, it's sacred. And so she begins to live differently. She speaks slower, listens deeper, gives less often, but with more intention. Her love is no longer scattered everywhere like confetti, it's offered like a blessing, deliberate, meaningful, and strong. She realizes that her purpose was never to be liked, but to be aligned with truth, with peace, with the quiet rhythm of her own heart. This is the turning point. The moment she stops chasing harmony outside herself and begins to cultivate it within. The moment she stops asking, "Am I too much?" and begins saying, "Am I enough?" It's not an easy transformation. The old habits call out to her, the urge to overgive, to explain, to fix, but she breathes through it, remembering that healing is not about becoming someone new, but returning to who she was before the world told her she wasn't enough. Her kindness no longer hides her truth. Her no's no longer feel cruel. Her silence is no longer submission. It is strength. She is learning that love and limits can coexist. That compassion and clarity can walk side by side. That being kind doesn't mean losing your edges. It means knowing when to open your hands and when to fold them in prayer for your own peace. And in that stillness, in the space between what she gives and what she guards, she rediscovers her power, not the loud kind that needs to be seen, but the quiet, radiant power of a woman who finally remembers that she is whole. She was never meant to disappear. She was meant to rise. And she rises, not as the woman who pleases, but as the woman who lives fully. Not as the woman who gives endlessly, but as the woman who gives wisely. Not as the woman who hides behind kindness, but as the woman who has learned that the truest kindness begins with herself. And in that gentle awakening, she becomes what she was always meant to be. A living expression of grace, strength, and truth. The woman who no longer fears her own boundaries. The woman who no longer apologizes for her light. The woman who has stopped being a too kind and finally started being of real. There's a certain kind of anger that hides behind compassion. You can't see it at first. It doesn't shout, it doesn't break things. It lives quietly like smoke after a fire, moving gently through your soul. It's the anger of the woman who keeps giving, even when she has nothing left. It's the exhaustion of the heart that keeps forgiving what it shouldn't have to. It's the ache of the one who has been gentle too long in a world that confuses gentleness with weakness. You can feel it when she smiles, but her eyes are tired. You can hear it when she says, "It's okay," but her voice trembles just slightly, as though her truth is fighting to escape. That's the quiet rage of kindness turned inward. A fire that burns through her peace, yet never lights up the sky enough for anyone to see. She has mastered the art of swallowing her feelings so well that even her pain starts to believe it doesn't exist. But the body remembers, the soul remembers, and every time she chooses silence over honesty, every time she says yes when her spirit screams no, she buries herself a little deeper beneath the weight of being good. It's not that she wants to suffer. It's that she was taught that love means sacrifice, that to be kind is to be available, to endure, to forgive endlessly. She doesn't realize that the fire she's holding back is not meant to destroy. It's meant to transform. The anger she hides is not a sign of failure. It's the language of her boundaries calling out for air. It's the soul saying, "You have given too much." It's the whisper of truth, breaking through layers of guilt, conditioning, and fear. For too long, she's mistaken suppression for peace. But true peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of honesty. And honesty, when spoken from love, is the most compassionate thing there is. So she begins to listen. Not to the voices that tell her to be quiet, but to the pulse within her that beats in rhythm with truth. And that's where she finds the courage to practice what many misunderstand. Sacred selfishness. It's not greed, it's not arrogance, it's not a rejection of others, it's the gentle return to herself. It's saying, I am allowed to rest. I am allowed to need. I am allowed to exist beyond my usefulness. Sacred selfishness is the moment she stops believing that love must always cost her something. It's the shift from depletion to discernment, from pleasing to presence. It's when she realizes that protecting her energy is not cold, it's wise. Because if she keeps pouring into everyone else while her own cup runs dry, she'll begin to resent the very people she wanted to help. You cannot be kind from emptiness. True kindness flows from fullness. There's something holy about saying, I choose me. Not because she's closing her heart to others, but because she's finally opening it to herself. She begins to understand that her energy is sacred currency. Not everyone deserves to spend it. And so, she starts to give more thoughtfully. She gives when it feels aligned, not obligated. She gives when it feels expansive, not draining. She learns that love, to be real, must be reciprocal. That mutual respect is the foundation of emotional health. That compassion does not require the absence of self-awareness. And with each boundary she sets, the guilt begins to fade. The guilt that used to whisper, "You're selfish for taking time for yourself." Now she understands, it's not selfish to protect your peace, it's self-respect to do so. When she finally embraces sacred selfishness, she starts to see how often her worth had been tied to her ability to give. The more she gave, the more valuable she thought she was. But now, she redefines value. Value is not measured by sacrifice. It's measured by alignment. And alignment means doing what honors her soul, not just what pleases others. This revelation brings clarity, but also grief, because she begins to notice how many times she was celebrated for her pain. How often people said, "You're so strong," when what they really meant was, "Thank you for suffering silently so we don't have to feel uncomfortable." And she realizes that the world rarely celebrates the woman who says, "No more." But she says it anyway, because she has learned that freedom doesn't require applause. The illusion of endless giving breaks here. The illusion that she was meant to be everyone's anchor, everyone's healer, everyone's constant source of love. She starts to see how that illusion was built. built on centuries of stories that told women their power lies in service, that their virtue lies in endurance. But endurance without balance isn't strength. It's slow self-destruction. It's an old lie disguised as loyalty. She starts to see that she's been giving from habit, not from heart. That her generosity had become a kind of survival mechanism. A way to feel worthy, a way to feel needed. She had mistaken depletion for devotion. But love that drains you is not love. It's dependency wrapped in expectation. So she pauses, she breathes, and she begins to unlearn the rhythm of overextension. At first it feels foreign, to rest without guilt, to decline without apology, to sit in silence and feel the weight of her own unmet needs. But slowly, something beautiful begins to grow in that stillness. It's not pride, it's presence. It's the sacred knowing that she was never meant to save everyone. She was meant to save herself, so that her presence could truly bless others. The world will try to pull her back, of course. They'll say, "You've changed." And she'll smile softly because yes, she has. She's learned that love is not measured by how much you lose yourself for it, but by how much truth remains when you give it. And here, in this quiet maturity, she begins to build a new rhythm. She no longer rushes to fix everything. She no longer pours from an empty soul. Instead, she learns to give from overflow. The kind of giving that feels like joy, not duty. She starts to look at her reflection and finally sees the woman behind the exhaustion, the one she left waiting somewhere between her acts of service and her tears at night. And she whispers to her, "I remember you. I'm sorry I left you waiting so long." That's when the healing begins. The slow return to herself, one breath, one boundary, one truth at a time. No longer the endless giver, no longer the selfless savior, but the balanced, radiant, awakened woman who knows that she deserves the same tenderness she gives away. She moves differently now. Her presence no longer seeks to prove, but to be. Her eyes no longer search for validation, they rest in awareness. She no longer apologizes for the energy she withholds. She understands that her peace is a prayer, and not everyone deserves to be part of that sacred silence. There's a quiet confidence in this new chapter of her life. She doesn't boast about her strength. She doesn't announce her boundaries. She simply lives them. She walks through the world lightly but not blindly. Her kindness is still there, but now it has roots. It no longer bends with every passing wind. And in this grounded kindness, she begins to feel something she hasn't felt in years. Ease. The weight of overgiving begins to lift. Her body softens. Her breath deepens. She no longer fears disappointing others. She only fears betraying herself again. The illusion of endless giving falls away like autumn leaves, revealing what was always true beneath it. That she was never meant to carry the world. She was meant to walk through it with grace, with discernment, with love that knows when to stop. Now when she gives, it's intentional. Now when she loves, it's chosen. Now when she rests, it's sacred. And the world feels different. Not because it changed, but because she did. She has learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "I deserve peace too." Her kindness still lights the way, but now it burns steady, no longer to warm everyone, but to guide herself home. And that is the quiet revolution of the kind woman who finally decided to stop disappearing. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from fear. A silence that tastes like surrender, like the echo of swallowed words and buried truths. Many women live inside this kind of quiet. They call it patience, they call it grace. But deep down they know it's the silence of the soul, learning how to survive what the heart can no longer carry. You stay quiet to avoid being misunderstood. You soften your tone so others can stay comfortable. You convince yourself that peace means keeping the water still, even if you are the one drowning underneath. And for a while it works. You feel safe in the stillness. You believe silence protects you. But slowly, you begin to realize that your silence doesn't build peace. It teaches others how to ignore your pain. Because every time you swallow your truth, Someone learns that your boundaries are negotiable. Every time you minimize your feelings, you invite someone to do the same. And so, without meaning to, you create the very patterns that drain you. You think, if I just stay quiet, this will pass. If I just endure, it will stop. But silence doesn't dissolve what's wrong. It deepens it. It takes root in your spirit, grows heavy in your chest, until one day you no longer recognize your own voice. You start to believe that peace is the absence of conflict, when in truth, it's the presence of truth. Even when that truth trembles on your lips. The hardest thing is learning to speak after years of silence. Your voice feels foreign. Your words stumble, unsure of their permission. But the first time you say, "This hurt me," something powerful happens. Your body exhales the weight it has carried in secret. You begin to remember that your voice was never the problem. Your suppression was. And the moment you speak your truth, not in anger, but in clarity, you awaken a new kind of peace. Not the kind that pleases everyone, but the kind that honors your soul. You see, silence can be holy when it's chosen, but silence becomes suffering when it's forced. True peace doesn't ask you to mute your spirit. It invites you to align it with honesty. It doesn't demand that you hide what you feel. It teaches you to express it with wisdom. And the moment you realize this, your voice no longer feels like rebellion. It feels like freedom. That's when the mirror begins to appear. Not the physical one, but the mirror of relationships, of energy, of reflection. Every person you meet becomes a mirror showing you something about yourself. Your beliefs, your fears, your wounds, your worth. Life doesn't send you random people, it sends you reflections. The friend who never listens reflects the parts of you that ignore your own needs. The lover who withholds affection mirrors the ways you withhold love from yourself. The person who disrespects your boundaries shows you how much you've been willing to tolerate to avoid loneliness. Every interaction becomes a revelation, not about them, but about the space you've created for such energy to exist. At first, this realization hurts. It's easier to blame others than to look inward. But when you begin to see life this way, not as punishment but as invitation, you step into a new dimension of awareness. You begin to understand that people treat you according to the energy you project. Not the words you speak, but the vibration of self-worth that radiates from your being. You teach people how to love you by how you love yourself. You teach them what's acceptable by what you allow. And so, when you begin to honor your boundaries, to stand firm in your value, the mirrors change. Suddenly, the people who thrive on your silence drift away. Those who need your weakness to feel powerful begin to lose their hold. And those who are capable of love that reflects your growth begin to appear. It's not magic, it's alignment. The moment you stop begging to be seen, the universe sends those who can truly see you. Because when you respect yourself, you set the standard for the kind of energy allowed to enter your life. But this shift doesn't always feel peaceful at first. It can feel lonely, empty, strange. Because when you start seeing through the mirrors, the illusions fall away. The relationships that once felt comforting suddenly feel heavy. The conversations that once filled your time now drain your soul. It's not that you've become cold, it's that you're evolving. Your spirit no longer finds nourishment in spaces that require you to abandon yourself. In this transition, you might question everything. You might wonder, was it always this one-sided? Did I let it happen? And the answer is gentle. Yes, but without shame. Because you did what you knew until you knew better. And now that you do, you cannot unknow it. You can't return to a life that thrives on your absence. You can't stay in rooms that require your silence to stay beautiful. That's where the next awakening begins. In the realization that emotional availability, when unbalanced, is a form of self-abandonment. You've been everyone's comfort zone for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to be held in the same way you hold others. You've listened to so many stories that you stopped telling your own. You've been the healer, the listener, the giver. But who becomes that for you? There is a quiet fatigue that comes from being the emotional backbone for everyone around you. It's not bitterness, it's depletion. You start to notice that the people who call you when they need comfort never call just to check on your heart. You begin to realize that your strength has become their convenience. And slowly, a sadness settles. Not because you no longer love them, but because you start to understand the difference between reciprocity and routine. Being emotionally available to everyone sounds noble, but it often comes from an unhealed need to be valued through usefulness. If they need me, they won't leave, you think. But that kind of love is not love. It's survival in disguise. Because when your worth depends on how much you give, you become addicted to giving. Even when it empties you, you must learn to hold your heart with the same tenderness you offer others. You must learn that not every broken soul is your responsibility to fix. You must learn that empathy without discernment becomes self-destruction. It's not cruelty to step back from those who refuse to grow. It's compassion for yourself and for them. Because sometimes your presence prevents others from facing the mirror of their own lessons. There is deep wisdom in emotional boundaries. It is the understanding that your love is not infinite. It must be replenished. It's knowing that you can listen without absorbing, that you can care deeply without carrying, that you can offer warmth without burning yourself alive to keep others comfortable. You start to recognize that your energy is sacred, that your emotions are not public property, and you learn to reserve your compassion for those who return it with intention, not just need. Because not everyone deserves the language of your empathy. Some people only understand love when it costs you something, and the moment it doesn't, they lose interest. But the woman who knows her worth no longer bargains with her peace. She no longer mistakes attention for care or guilt for love. She gives only where her spirit